Hi everyone, we're back and we are going into the second half of Memories of Ice. Now, another full disclosure, I am almost through this third sub-book. So this chapter 14 starts at page 400 or so, and now I think I'm about at page 630 or something like that. So a lot has happened. And I'm going to get burnt out if I am going to go through every scene in such detail. I would love to do that. But if you're reading this with me, or if you've already read it, I'm sure you already kind of know what's happening. I'm not trying to do a summary thing, even though that is fun. But I want to touch on some themes and just reactions, especially with some characters. So I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker. I've said that from the start, and anyway, it's just going to take too long. I want to read these books, and it's taking me forever. I'm trying to underline everything so I remember as I'm going through what to say. That's taking me so long, but if I can just enjoy it a little bit more, not get so caught up in the details, then I can get on to the rest of the series and other things like that. Now, chapter 14... this is where the siege is about to happen. And oh my goodness. It's amazing that some characters in this book can go from being really... I didn't really care about them a ton, like Gruntle. Thought he was kind of funny. I think he said some... basically at the start of this book, everyone, the Panions are around the city, and... everyone's just kind of at the bar. They're having the debaucherous last kind of hurrah before they figure we're all getting eaten anyway. And what did he said? What did he say? He said, because of all the number of Teniscauri, this is on the first page of chapter 14, because of how many there are. He says there's barely going to be a mouthful of Cap'n citizen each, meaning of them each. They're barely going to get they're supposed to come to this feast, and there's barely enough of them to... Anyway, they didn't appreciate that. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I like Gruntle because I am that guy. I'm the guy in a theater or school play or whatever, who, when everything's quiet and tense, I start laughing about something, or I have some stupid joke that really a certain group will maybe laugh about it, but in general, anyway, I am Gruntle in a lot of ways, and I really love his arc. I was so surprised. Now, he's still down. I love how much in this book especially, actually really in all of them, Steven Erikson has brought characters down to rock bottom. And it's almost like at that rock bottom moment, that's when it's like they can either go this way or that way. And that it's almost like that is really their beginning of a journey. And I mean, that's just in writing anyway. It's not just a Steven Erikson thing. But I have enjoyed how he has expressed rock bottom for a few of these characters. And for Gruntle, he just doesn't want to do anything. Buke has had rock bottom, and he built himself up out of it. And Gruntle is upset about Harlow being dead for what he feels like is such a pointless thing. Says, well, maybe I'll just join the Teniscauri. What's the point? Stani has gone off to kind of help fight in a resistance. Remember, she's kind of like a believer now. She got rescued by Karuli, and of all the people to become kind of, not religious, I shouldn't say, but, have faith in something like this, she goes off and does that. And really, Gruntle's like, well, she can go and do her own thing. So very, very interesting. And Buke gives him a bit of a retort, or a kind of is trying to build up Gruntle and says, well, it really, is this what Harlow died for, to see you doing this? There's no meaning in his death if you do this. And in the next scene, I said I wasn't going to do this, but I already am. We have also the Barghast 2 in the middle of that barracks where everyone's going around. They're kind of in the middle of it. They're in sort of they're meditating. They throw this deer shoulder blade onto a brazier, and Itkovian, who another character who, holy smokes, in the matter of pages, goes from, him and Gruntle go from kind of being meh characters for me to right at the top. Right at the top. I cried with Itkovian's story arc a little bit. I mean, I wasn't tearing up, but I was feeling it strong. And I should show you the pages in my book where I marked all those, marked his point. I think that's in the next chapter. Man, I marked it up like crazy. I love these two guys. Now, the Talani Mass have stopped all these Kachane Chamal hunters in the north, but they're not going to come in because it's not really their war, and the gathering's up in the north. And that's bugging the prince, and the prince is upset, I think, in this chapter that he's not really in the loop. And these Barghast are in this bit of a three-way kind of conversation with someone who Itkovian doesn't see there, but but that's happening, and it's an interesting moment. Now, Kaladin Brood and them are still at least 5 weeks away, so they're going to have to either make this work or find a way to flee, which is something that the prince wants to do, or is at least considering. Kaladin Brood isn't going to be here, so Itkovian and them, say, well, you've hired us Grey Swords to defend the city, so that's what we're going to try our best to do, for better or worse. We're not going to have a sortie out of here. We're not going to flee. And then it's interesting also, the thing that kind of changes Itkovian from being a little bit a stick in the mud is when he's starting to, Bruchalion, is that his name? The mortal sword for Fenner, is saying, you have to get some information from Heaton, the Barghast lady. And I don't think I've talked about the Barghast ladies, but if you know, you know. They're pretty open about certain things, and she wants Itkovian to be, to sleep with her or whatever. And she's a little bit like a kind of a Klingon when I picture it, just a little bit brusque. And he's into it, and it's kind of, but he's sworn this life of celibacy that he's put upon himself. And this Bruchalion, gotta make sure I have his name, says, you are faithful to Fenner, but I don't think this celibacy thing is something that he's required of you. And you've put it on yourself. And at that moment, Itkovian just has this flood of, what does he say exactly? Your word. Oh, no. It's not the mortal sword. It's the Destriant. And he's kind of the spiritual voice of Fenner. And then Itkovian says, your words invite a carnal flood. So he's ready to go. He's ready to go. And as soon as it's this moment and he goes off to find Heaton, the siege begins. Just his luck. Now, I can't go over all of these points because it honestly would take 2 hours. But man, this siege was expressed so well. And one of the things that really is conveyed, I think, well, is just this idea that they're not going to let any stone go uncontested. And there will be heaps of bodies, just fodder, just flooding in. Sometimes barely with more than just a knife, of these people just flooding in to to siege Kapistan, and they will be in these mounds, and they will also just become like the new floor and cobblestone of this whole area. Basically, if you go anywhere, you're going to be walking on just this flood of bodies, and it'll show parts where they are. Anyway, wherever Gruntle goes, he decides, I'm going to go get Stani. And even at this point, I'm like, well, that's probably a good idea, but he doesn't want to fight. And there's this amazing moment that really turned. If I wasn't already into Gruntle at the start of this with his joke about each of them giving a mouthful to the Teniscowry, it's this moment with Stani, and my heart really goes out to Stani because he sees her, and it took me a couple read-throughs to really understand what happens, but she's still trying to kind of the tip of her knife is broken a little bit down from the top, or her sword, and she's broken. She's still being tough, but you can tell it's just right at the surface. And it's implied that she was raped by one of these seer damen, and raped her and then left. And she thought, this was supposed to be a war. What the heck? So she's left damaged, more damaged than perhaps if she would have just been really injured with a sword or something. She's damaged psychologically or whatever. I don't have experience with that, so I don't know. But it really comes through with the pages, or through these pages. And Gruntle kind of slows down, and he realizes what's happening, and in such a fatherly way, brings Stani in. And I love that. And brings her to an area where, a place where she can just kind of clean up and take some time. Even though the siege is going, there's only one way in, and he will stand at the door if anyone comes in. And this is the turning point for Gruntle. And what a turn. He doesn't want to just get revenge on one seer daemon. He wants to kill thousands of them. And it's just this rage building inside of him. This rage kind of entering his muscles, and power entering his muscles, I should say. But he's changed in this moment. Has something to fight for. I know it's later on in the scene, in the chapter, but if I go scene by scene, it's just going to be confusing. I love that when things are going wrong, and the Grey Swords are doing their best, Gruntle makes this standard of he brings in someone. I think it was him. I might get it a little wrong, but man, what a powerful moment where he brings in this child who's been chewed on already, and shows these parents what happens, what's the effect, and they make of this child's tunic a standard, kind of like a flag, something to band behind. And I love that as a theme, that these parents become just, they have the same thing inside of them when they see this. Now, that wasn't the spark for Gruntle. It was this thing with Stani. But it's this mama bear and papa bear thing to defend the weakest among them. And I love that. I love that. And at this point, we still think that he's got these 2 cutlasses, and he's kind of fighting like a boar, but he's more than that. And I love that. And I also love the journey that Itkovian goes on, because he is also, he's, you know, the mortal shield of Fenner, but it is Heaton that calls him Wolf, and that will play in later. And man, I just love this part of the story. Now let me go through. Before that, I'll just go to Buke. Timeline's all kind of all over the place, but we find that Buke has been changed. He took he crushed up that clay with the bird clay thing, and drank it, and says, well, it's worked. And they have been able to stop Corbel Broach from finding more victims, so they kind of quelled that, which is very cool. Let me just see. Now, you know, the Talan Imas. Let me just make sure. Yeah. So because of the slaughter of the Talan, the slaughter from the Talan Imas of the Kachane Chamal, they know that this would be a moment when the Septarch would have to change his strategy. And so this is really the moment where you know, there's a lot of unknowns here. Are they going to be swept up in a day, or are they going to last the night? Yeah, but Kapistan is on its own. We see that night comes. We see more waves and waves coming from the south and the east into the city, or trying to funnel in through there, and it's just this crazy amount of death, and entire blocks were aflame, and Itkovian's just looking at it. The Destriant kind of does his force healing thing on Itkovian when he's been beat up, and it seems like this is the last time that this is going to work. He's kind of depleted. If he needs it again, if anyone in the city needs it again, it's kind of a tough luck situation. Let me make sure. What is this part? There is a new thing that happens. Oh yeah, and all the things that's going on with the thrall. All these priests are kind of within it, even though within this kind of center area with the Wrath Shadow Throne, Wrath Fenner, Wrath Trake, Wrath Burn, all these different people. And then another man shows up. And it ends up being Karuli, Gruntle's old boss. And remember, he's working for Krull now. And he has come to give counsel and to also address that masked council. Now, yeah, very, very cool. But his title at this moment that he's shares with everyone, which is so awesome. And the thing that he comes to tell them is that his title is Wrath Krull. Remember, as an elder god, he hasn't totally been depleted of followers if he has this guy. Wrath Krull, and he says, there is one among you who will betray us all. Awesome. Well, I mean, not awesome. But, okay. Let me see if I can. So, yeah. So there's more stuff going on, and Itkovian needs to. He's keeping his cool, and he decides, or he has to go neutralize this. He has to go save this other area, and he knows it is virtually this area of town, and kind of take over there. He has these messengers going all over. But not, sorry, I'm forgetting this because I'm just looking through. He's sending someone out to attack these siege engines, and he basically knows that it's going to be a suicide mission. Go out there, retrieve any survivors that they can, and make it back. Now, sends him out. He knows this person. He feels terrible that he's doing it, but it's a necessary thing. And then another messenger shows up and says, at the north gate, there is a citizen who we know as Gruntle. And this is like the coolest thing. A citizen has rallied the remnants of the Kappenthal Guard, a civilian, and some caravan guards. And he has pushed them back, and there's going to be some sappers going to repair the north gate. He has created this he's rallied the troops, and he is fighting ferociously. I just, so cool. So cool. Now they talk back, they go back to this moment with Karuli. And some of the other priests are already, I mean, if they didn't already have some paranoia, they have some here. And they want to ask who it's going to be. He doesn't quite tell them right off. But let me see. He gives them some hints about those who know your own conscience to be clear, brothers and sisters, will thereby be united. The one who cannot make that claim will likely be dealt with by his God. Which kind of confused me, but whatever. It's still super cool. Lots more. Gruntle is led westward now. Has taken care of business up in the north and is going westward. And he's just rallying people. Rallying people. And I just have all these notes in here, but I don't think I need to do anything. But he is just this most perfect natural leader. Just driven by being able to express this same kind of rage and this noble cause, which I loved. And that was the power that brought everyone out. Remember, the Panian Daemon, or the crippled god, preys on people when they're at their weakest moments. So, and we have that expressed in a lot of these characters. People kind of falling when they're at this weakest moment. But, and this city has fallen. I mean, their hope has fallen. Their heart has fallen. But Gruntle expresses this flash of hope. It's almost, even though the city and Gruntle, this story is about a siege, it really is about this theme, again, about pushing against the, really, even though you're brought to your lowest, pushing against it and not giving in to that, which I love. They notice this standard that they use. He's fighting with these two cutlasses. They think he's this new warrior of the boar. and they know that for now the city holds, but there are so many. There's so many of these Teniscauri still showing up. Now I'm going to just skip some because I don't want to spend too much time with this chapter. I think I've gotten the main bits. There are... Oh, yes! Well, I can't miss this, though. This is where we notice also that rather than a boar, it is like tiger claws. He's this warrior that's more, instead of like a boar, he's fighting like with the ferocity of a tiger, and actually has these markings with upon him. Remember, Heboric had these markings of the boar sort of upon him. Whatever happened to Gruntle, he's been given these awesome markings, which that is like the coolest image to think about. I think that's cool, at least. All right, we get to this next scene, and it is with Buke, and he is following Beauchelain and Corbel Broach, who are just fascinated by the Teniscauri, especially with the eldest among them, this eldest child of the Dead Sea, which is, again, nasty. And I believe this is the moment. Right. This is the moment where we find that they are soul taken. And they turn into these rooks, these birds. And there was a kind of a hint earlier on where people were looking to the sky, kind of looking to the rooftops, because it seemed like Corbel Broach always kind of attacked from on top or whatever. So I did wonder that. But they are these birds, these soul taken. But Buke as well realizes that he is soul taken from this bird. That's what this Caerulli Crawl did for Buke. And so he's following from far, and it's pretty cool. Now, let me just make sure I get this last part right. He's a sparrowhawk. But as these rooks are coming closer, Buke is watching from on top, and he sees the Teniscauri ringing the city, and it seems like there's just no stopping this assault. Capistan was going to be devoured by this Panian group. The Panian seer is a monster in truth. This is Buke thinking. The tide will spread every city, every continent. And remember, when I think of this, yes, it is about the characters, but he's talking about the theme of this chaos and this giving up sort of thing that's going to spread everywhere. The Panian domain is just one tool used by the crippled god, it seems, to have this going on. So I love that. Now, there's this. His thoughts were scattered by a virulent bloom of sorcery to the east. Black waves cut down screaming peasants by the hundreds. Demons burst from torn portals on the plain. The two rooks, meaning Corbel Broach and Beauchelain, swept down and converged on this Anastor, this leader, the first of the children of the Dead Seed, sitting on a horse. But then sorcery hammers them back, and the figure on the horse just remains untouched. And let me just, And so they come back, and Buke is just basically smiling at them like, you shouldn't have done that. And it ends there. And what a cool chapter. Now I will get into chapter 15, I think, right away here if I have some time. But very cool chapter, very cool, especially thematically. And I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Thanks.